Hello everyone, I'm Seb from Profil. I'm very pleased to welcome you, Ted Leaonard from Pardon Seeking Animals. First of all, how are you tonight or today?
I'm doing well. It's this afternoon. It's 3 p.m. my time, so it's I'm doing well. Just working hard and doing music when I can. And yeah, as a matter of fact, I was just on a conference call, and then your Skype started to ring. And I'm like, oh crap, that's right now. That's happening right now. So I'm glad I was still sitting here working. So.
So you just released Spooky Action at Distance. The title refers to physics and to a phenomenon described by Einstein. What can you say about it?
What can I say about why Einstein said it and to whom? I don't recall offhand, but it was basically a theory that he was that another physicist had presented that he was doubting, and other than the fact that it's just kind of a cool sounding phrase, I love it for its I love it for its nerdiness, I guess you could say, because it definitely siphons off a certain sect of society that's going to know that's even going to be familiar with that phrase. So yeah, but John picked that phrase. I don't think there's any deep meaning to it, other than it's just kind of a cool sounding phrase, and Einstein said it. So what could be cooler than that? So.
Because in physics, it refers to a phenomenon described by which one particle can effectively know something about another particle at the same time, even if those two particles are separated by a great distance.
Right, right.
It's quite mystic and inspiring, and the title is express something more than a simple title.
Yeah, I didn't know that context, but yeah, there's almost yeah, it almost gets into where the natural and supernatural worlds kind of converge. When one particle can know something from a distance. Well, and there was some sort of uh, experiment done where when they would force particles through this particular beam, that they would behave differently depending on whether they were being watched or not. Have you ever seen that? Yeah. So there's love that kind of stuff. That's pretty bizarre to think that. Well, it's not that bizarre, really. I mean, it kind of goes back to the oblivion particle, or what that could possibly mean. Where some people would talk about the God particle, and so I don't think. I don't think that's why it was chosen by. It's certainly not why the Oblivion Particle was chosen as the title for that
Yes, of
album either.
course.
But yeah, there's probably a common thread in there somewhere.
Thank you. This is your fourth album in 5 years. Do you ever sleep?
Well, okay, so this it should be. I mean, John it's his brainchild. This particular band, it's really his. I've contributed to writing on the previous three albums here and there, but it's mostly John's baby, and John's the one who never sleeps. I mean, he gets when he finishes his work day, he's writing every day, and that's just what he does. My life is a little bit more, varied, and I have a lot. Well, I have a wife and kids. He doesn't have a wife or kids, so he's got more free time. Let's just put it that way. But he's also super disciplined about it. I mean, it's not just for lack of free time that I haven't done as much writing. I've let that muscle kind of atrophy a little bit, um, and which is a shame. But I've just been so busy with work that I'm just not writing as much these days. So it's great that John still is, and it keeps us busy just recording. And he's always been super open about any kind of interpretation. I don't change lyrics very often, but I might change the way things are phrased, as long as the meaning doesn't change. But certainly with melodies and guitar parts and stuff, what we usually get is a work, and then we're left to make it our own and make it sound like us. Um, so if you ever heard the demo, if you ever heard John sing, you'd understand that I have a lot of license to do what I want with his vocal lines. And he's gotten great better as a singer over the years, but some of them were pretty funny. I shouldn't probably say that out loud, but and then the guitar parts that he usually sends along as ideas are usually pretty basic framework of the guitar parts, and so I get to do a lot of creating my own parts and that sort of thing.
And you seem to take a new approach in
Probably
terms of
the most.
sound and style. What what do you think? A new approach in terms of sound and music in this album?
For this album, yeah, I think I think there's almost a softer, it's a little softer around the edges. I would say it's definitely more melodic than, I mean, all of our albums have been very melodic, but it's got a little bit of a pop sensibility to it with the addition of some female backing vocals and things like that. But it still retains a lot of the really cool real acoustic instrumentation that we've always had with horn parts and some strings and things like that, which I always love. From a guitar standpoint, I tried to rely less and less on my digital recording setup, and which was just a Line 6 Helix, and tried to rely more on my real amp and real pedals and real mics, and wanted to do as much of that on this album as possible. And so there's a little bit more of that on this album. There's still some moments where I pull out the Helix because it's a very specific sound, or if it's a fuzz part, you can bet it's the Helix, because I own probably 20 overdrive pedals. Not a single one of them is a fuzz pedal, because I just, not my bag, It's not my favorite sound. But
Yes.
and I had a new guitar for this album that I didn't have, so it was and it was basically a Telecaster style guitar, but
Telecaster.
even twangier than my previous Tele sounds. So that was a big part of the guitar sounds anyway. But from a stylistic standpoint, it's definitely a step in another direction. I know it was very important to John that we don't repeat ourselves too much from album to album. So he always trying to let some influence in that maybe hasn't been delved into before. So, but there's plenty of moments of kind of familiarity too. I think it's hard not to sound like us when you've got, Dave and me and Jimmy, playing. We're going to sound, there's going to be moments where it's like, that sounds familiar,
And your sound is punchier, and vocally you seem to come across more confident, with more upper register. What would you say?
Confidence in the upper register. I mean, yeah, I'm not. I don't know why that would be the case, but I think that if anything, I feel like where I continue to refine as a vocalist is more the stuff that's not in the upper register. The stuff that's more lyrical and almost speaking the lyric. So
With your art,
yeah, at least that's what I try to work on
of course.
most. When I'm recording, I'm really trying to understand what it is I'm singing about, obviously, but really trying to interpret it, trying to act,
Of
basically.
course,
A good singer has to be an actor,
yes.
um, and so that's that. I take a lot of cues from Steve Hogarth. I think early on in my days, when I was very young, 23, 24, and Enchant was first starting, I was trying to, hit the highest notes and, be able to, treating singing more like a sport. And then all the guys in Enchant were huge Marillion fans. I hadn't really heard of them, and they sat and made me listen to Steve Hogarth,
Still,
and then
oh,
I got really hooked on I got really hooked on his approach and how emotional his sound is, and so I've tried to take as much from that as possible without sounding. I don't try to sound like him, but I try to at least utilize that approach to singing and make it more about that than hitting the highest notes or anything like that, because there's guys out there that there's no reason to try to compete with them. There's guys out there that are just ridiculous. Um, and so I'm never going to be that guy. I got to do what I can do best.
of course. I love Neverland, for example.
You love? I'm
From
sorry.
Neverland from Marilyn.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Very
yeah.
good song too.
I just listened to. I was driving for 4 hours yesterday and listened to Brave
Oh,
and to oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the album because it's so old. It's
this
not
French
that old.
Engine, for example.
No, I listened to a little bit of Afraid of Sunlight, and Beautiful, and but no, I listened in its entirety. I listened to some Season's End. God, I
Ah,
don't know why I was
yes.
blanking, which is probably my favorite album, of theirs. Um, my favorite guitar solo is ever is Easter. That's it's just so perfect. Everything about that.
I would say Sugar Mice.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
All right.
In terms of lyrics, it's a compilation of stories and with a lot of topics. Can you tell us about it?
It'd be a great time to have John on the call because, like I said, he wrote most of the lyrics, but there's what I do know about John's writing style in general is that it's never based on anything kind of autobiographical. So, which is interesting. Sometimes there'll be songs where I'm like, man, is that I almost have this picture of his house as having like a lot of, because I've never been to his apartment where he does all his recording, um, but I almost picture it as having like a lot of old, lunch boxes and toys and things like that. Uh, because sometimes when he writes, you just think, I wonder if that's if he's writing that about himself. And there was one song on our last album where he was, which the name is escaping me, but where he's talking about how all the stuff he's gathered, kind of almost like a hoarder. But he's not like that at all. He's very clean and neat and doesn't like clutter and so nothing about what he writes is autobiographical. So there's a lot of songs about terrible breakups and things like that. There's a song in there about that's one of the singles. It's about a teenage pregnancy. There's a song about alien invasion. It's he's very much a short story writer. If he wasn't so adept at writing music, he would probably be writing little novels and he'd probably be a paperback writer. Paperback writer. Um, but yeah, because everything he writes is very much a story. And he kind of conceptualizes it as a short story in his head before he's starting to try to write it. And I'm not like that at all. Most of my song, anything that I've written is something I've either lived or heard about. So it is either biographical or autobiographical in my case. And I like both, or something I feel strongly about that has nothing to do with me, but I like both. I like the type of writers that can just write about anything and be very vague, and sometimes you don't even know what they're trying to say, but it sounds cool. So Neil was kind of like that in the early days. His writing has a lot more intent these days than obviously, but in the early days it was sometimes you got the vague picture of what he was talking about, but it was always very clever
Of
um,
course.
and not very. Yeah, it wasn't very. You really got a clear picture of what he was talking about, but it was always fun. Um, yeah, I love Neil's lyrics too. Um, but this is not a Spock Spirit interview. But but yeah, I usually write from experience myself. So, but none of mine. I didn't do any writing for this album. So
He once was is a jewel, a fantastic piece of music. I listen to this track all day and all time. It's very great. How was the making of this song and what is the story behind?
oh man, the
But to
story.
be honest, it's a duo. Yes, to be honest, and you sing like an actor, like you said before.
Yeah, yeah, I'd have to have the lyrics in front of me to tell you what the story's about. But I don't. I probably have the LP sitting around here somewhere. Where did I put it?
Ah, it's
But that would be fun.
interesting if you are.
Yeah, I have the record here somewhere. Well, I have all three of the records up here on the wall, but you can't see it from your perspective. Oh, the first three. And then there's, of course, Wounded, big, huge poster that my wife got me there. But they're way up there. But anyway, yeah, I'm not sure what I'd have to review the lyrics to tell you what the story's about, but I remember recording it because um, definitely had a few exchanges go back and forth between me and John. I think when I sent him the first take, I retracted it um, before before he even sat it into a mix because I didn't feel like it sounded uh, confident enough in the first verse because it's so low and so kind of just spoken almost. I met a man in town today. It's first kind of sing-songy, almost sounds like a lilting, like Irish pub sing-along. And so I wanted it to have that right in your face, kind of breathy, but present. And so at first, I think I was trying to make it sound too pretty almost, and then realized I didn't like it. It almost sounded inauthentic. So I said, no, I want to do it again. And I think I sent through like three different versions of that first verse, especially. Once I got beyond the first verse, it was all kind of normal stuff. But I took a few cracks at that first verse before I felt good about it. And I think we even replaced a couple lines once we started mixing it. Because once I realized how loud he was going to have my voice in the mix, there was little moments there where I was like, I don't like that spot. So I think I replaced a couple words after they started mixing it too. So it was definitely a trickier one to sing, only because it's so intimate and so right up front. And actually, the general sound of the vocals on this entire album are much louder than I'm used to hearing myself mixed, really. We have a different guy mixing on this album. He's very much more vocal oriented than I would say
Yes.
Rich was. Rich for is amazing. First of all, let me preface anything I say because it's not going to. I don't want it to sound like a criticism at all. But vocals are one of the instruments, but not necessarily the prime focus.
Yes, I understand.
But like in the pop world or in country or anything like that, where vocals are like sitting on top of the mix and then there's a bed of music beneath them. That's kind of how I feel like Frank mixed this album. I feel like the vocals are very on top, which is nice. It was kind of cool to hear my voice like that because usually it's just kind of tucked right in there. So it was cool.
And the music is just beautiful, just it.
For He Once Was, it was really well written and fun to play. The guitar parts were, kind of sparse on that one, but still fun to play. Very
Yes.
cool.
Bulletproof is part of Spokesbuilder. Is an old Spokesbuilder song. and we
Mhm.
find it on this album, which is quite improved. What was the idea?
Well, I know that
It's just
that
for
John
fun.
wasn't. No, actually, John wasn't particularly happy with how it turned out, and the fact that it was kind of relegated to the B sides. Was that Oblivion Particle or Noise Floor?
Yes,
I think it
no, no,
was.
no. Noise floor.
Okay, so yeah, he wasn't. Yeah, that's right, because they recorded it in at Sweetwater with Nick on drums and everything, and he wasn't. I don't think he was there that day, and there was some differences in the feel and everything that he didn't really like. So he really wanted to have the version come out that he had in his mind, and so that's part of the reason. But there was some rewriting done too. Not much. I mean, most of the verses in the chorus are the same. The middle section's different, and yeah, it was kind of interesting to record it again because I it's when you've listened to a song 1,000 times after you've recorded it, of course you're like, man, I wish I would have done that a little bit different. So it was nice to get a second chance, to record it. And there was aspects of the original one that I kind of miss, but those aspects are because I'm just as big of a fan as Al and Rio, of Al and Rio is like, and there some of the way that Al like approached the guitar part can only Al can do, because it's so signature to him. So it was interesting to re-record it. But I like both versions, frankly. I didn't have the disdain for the original version that John did, and I wouldn't say disdain, but he was just not quite happy with it. But there was yeah, I think there's another album or another song from those same B-sides that we're considering reworking on the next album, which he's already working on for the fifth album. And that's because it was just kind of almost an afterthought. I think it was the last song we recorded for Noise Floor. So there's one more from that B-sides that we might be rehashing. And that song was originally written for Kansas. So now I'm giving it away because if you're familiar with that album, you'd probably be able to guess which one sounds the most Kansas like. But yeah, I loved that song too. Well, might as well just say it. It's Days Will Remember. If you remember that one from Noise 4.
Mhm.
So we're thinking about reworking that one as well, which I would love to do because yeah, anything that sounds like Kansas is good enough for me. Huge Kansas fan, so.
What are the plans for the future? Do you plan to tour with the pattern-seeking animals in Europe, United States? What are the plans?
Yeah, I mean, we're open to play anywhere. It's gotten increasingly difficult to play overseas and make it cost out anymore.
Of course.
That's, and so Spox is doing a little run in February, January, February, in the UK, and then playing a festival in the Netherlands. Um, but really, just those dates in the UK and the Netherlands. We're not doing a full tour or anything. We're not. It's kind of it was really just the festival hired us, and then we had to throw some of the other dates in there to make it cost out, to make it profitable. But for a band like Patter Singing Animals, it's really tough unless we find another band that's either kind of the same level to go tour with us, or we got to open for somebody because we're not quite, we don't have the reach to go out there and headline without losing money. And, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would have been okay with losing money. Now, not so much. So, I can afford to lose money now where I couldn't back then. But, but at the same time, it's just like, it's almost like, hey, you know what are we trying to prove? I don't want to go out there and lose money. But we're looking for festivals to join in on, and we're looking for, that right other band. At one point we talked with District 97. We were talking about doing some American dates with them at one point, which would be I think it would be a good fit. Very different bands, but like as far as as far as notoriety, they're probably somewhere on the level with us. So it would be, and I think that the fans that would be attracted to those two bands are different enough to where there'd be a lot of cross pollination between our fan base, that have never heard them and they've never heard us, So that would have been, so we got to find something like that. But we're definitely interested in getting out there and playing for sure. I don't want the transatlantic tour from last year to be the last big thing I do. You don't get to know when the last thing is going to be, but I'm hoping that we can get out there and still, do a 2-3 week tour at some point, make it to Paris and, and get back to all those kind of usual places.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing solid in the works yet. And we didn't get on the cruise this year, which was, and there's no chance of getting on it at this point. In the past, where there's been cases where like a band cancels out, and you can get in there last minute, we'd probably be likely for that spot, but they're not going to do that this year because they're sold out. So, like if a band cancels, they're going to sell those rooms because they've got enough bands, So we're definitely not on the cruise this year, which is a bummer. But or 24, I should say. So yeah, we're just kind of, I don't know, putting out music and hoping that it grows and that eventually we'll have enough of an audience to warrant getting out there and perhaps headlining or whatever.
I hope so. Two last questions, very different, to end my interview. The artist you will have loved to be.
The artist I would have loved to have been.
One or two. Okay, one or two. Two artists.
Yeah,
one artist, two artists.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have been Steve Walsh. I wish I was a better organist and keyboard player, but at the same time, I would have loved to have been Steve Morse because he's my favorite guitar player and I'm obsessed with guitar. If I could be Steve Walsh but play guitar like Steve Morse, that's all I need. If I could sing like Steve and play like Steve. So.
And the song you will love to write.
Closet Chronicles, absolutely. Which is a Kansas song. That said, I mean, if I was going to branch outside of the kind of progressive rock world, then I'd probably say Jellyfish, and I would have loved to have written New Mistake. So if to go outside of Prague for a second, there's so many artists that I look up to, and for one reason or another, it all is as great of a player as Steve was, and singer as Steve Walsh was, and Steve Morse is on guitar. I would have also loved to have been as prolific of a writer as Kerry Livgren or Neil Morse, for that matter. Probably on the same level. So, yeah, I mean, but as a singer, guitar player, I don't know. That's a tough question. I think I've already answered it.
So thank you, Ted, for this interview. I wish you all the best for your future, the best music you can do for the future, the best of luck. So thank you very much. You were interviewed for Profil Prog. I'm Seb, and thank you once again, Ted. See you later. Thank you.
Yeah, take care. Thank you, Sebastian. Bye-bye.